What's going on, everyone? This is Gaurav and welcome to my learning channel. So in today's video, we're going to learn about SQL subqueries. Now, this is one of the topic which I would suggest is about intermediate to advanced level topic. However, if you do plan to use SQL on a regular basis, then this is one of the topic that you should definitely understand thoroughly, because if you understand this, then it's definitely going to make your life very, very easy. So without any further delay, let's get started. First of all, let me introduce you to the table that we are going to use for today's exercise. So let me just quickly go ahead and copy paste the table structure. So we are going to use two different tables for today's conversation. The first table is GA1. So this is in the database and it's called student underscore marks. So in this table, we have three variables. So you have student ID, course, and marks. And this is how the overall structure looks like. So like for instance, for this particular first record, you have student ID 1 and the student got 10 marks in the subject S1. Similarly, the same student, which is student 1, got 11 marks in the subject called S2. And as you go forward, you will see that, like for instance, in the last record, the student 8, the student ID is 8, got 93 in the subject S2. Let me just go ahead and quickly run this query. Just drop this table. I think this table already exists. Now let me create it once again for this conversation. And let me go ahead and insert data into that. Perfect, work. The second table is your GA1 dot student underscore details. So this is, as the name suggests, this is the student details. So you have variables like student ID, student name, student age, and student state. Pretty much all of these variables are fairly self-explanatory. However, we will still go through one record. So for instance, for first record, you have student ID 1. For this student, the name is name1. Now, as you can see that I am very lazy, so that's why I haven't put any actual names of students. And then afterwards you have age. So the student's age is 25 years and then state is NY, New York for the student. Let me go ahead and run the code to load the data for here as well. There we go. And we are all set. Perfect. Now, let me just quickly write a simple structure of SQL statement. So usually when you write a SQL statement, then it looks something like select variable 1, comma variable 2 from, and then you write some table, let's say table 1, where, and then you have condition 1, right? Condition 1, comma condition 2, and so on. This is your typical structure. And if you're following through this entire SQL playlist, you will see that this is something that I've discussed multiple times. So when we say that we have to write a subquery, then essentially you can insert that subquery, and I'm going to go ahead and write that in a minute, as a part of your where condition or from condition or your select condition. So we will go ahead and do that, all of these things one by one. So let me just quickly go ahead and write the structure if you want to introduce the subquery as a part of a where condition. So let's say that you have to select variable 1, variable 2 from table 1, but rather than writing a where condition, maybe you can write something like where student underscore ID in, and then here you can write another query in itself, right? So you can say select distinct student ID from, and let's say now you're selecting this from another table called table 2. So this is how your typical structure of subquery look like. So you have a main query, this is the main body of the query, and then you have a subquery, which is query within query, as the name suggests. This is the second part of the query, which is your child query that sits within this particular query, right? So I hope this makes sense. Now in this query, what's happening is that we are trying to select variable 1 and variable 2 from table 1. And as a where condition, the filter is that I want to see the records for only those records where student ID is in, and then I'm selecting this distinct student ID from table 2. So I just want to see the student ID which exists in table 2 as well as table 1. Now, if you know joins, then you would have thought about it by now that, well, we can do the exact same thing with joins as well. So you're right. I mean, this is something that you can do it with the help of join as well. However, this is probably one of the simplest example. As we are going to explore a few of the examples today's conversation, you will realize that there are a lot of other things that joins cannot do, but your subquery makes your life much more easier if you have to complete those tasks, right? So with that, let me just write a simple problem statement and let's get started with an actual example. So the first problem statement is we want to get the student details for all of the student who has a score more than 90 in the examination. So I would like to know these students, student ID, their name, their age, their state, and only for those students who have scored more than 90. Now, If I have to solve this problem, then how would I do that? First of all, I'll go to the second table, which is student underscore details, and I can get all of the 4 variables that I want. So I want student ID, name, age, and state. All of those details are here. However, this table does not have any student marks. And for that, I need to go to the second table over here. Now I have student ID and then your subject and then your marks as well. However, in the second table, I don't have any student details. So basically, I need to kind of join these two tables somehow, and then I need to get all of the details that you have in the second table. So let's try to do this exercise with the help of a subquery. So let me just quickly go ahead and write a query. So the query will be select, and then first of all, let's write the name of all of the variables that we want. So let me just go ahead and copy paste this so that we can save some time from GA1 dot. And then this is your table name, student underscore details. So let me just go ahead and copy that. And now where student underscore ID in. Now this is where I'm going to go ahead and write the subquery now. So for this subquery, I'll go ahead and select distinct student underscore ID from, and then let's go back to the first table. What was the name of the first table? It's called student underscore marks. So let's just go ahead and copy it. So from, and then we have a where condition because we want to see the details for only those students where marks is more than 90. And I'm going to go ahead and close this. Let's just go ahead and trigger this code. Now over here, you can see that you have details for few students. So you have detail for student number 7, student number 8. Let me just stretch this a little bit. So you have details for student number 7 and student number 8. And the name for student 7 is name 6. And then you have name 7, and then you have all of the details. Now let's take a look at the actual table to verify if these details are accurate or not. So as the problem suggests that we want to see the details for only those students who have scored more than 90. So let's first of all try to identify who are those students. So based on the data over here, I can see that there are 2 students, student number 7 who has scored more than 90. So over here, this student has scored 100. And then you also have student 8 who has scored more than 90. So this is 92 and 93. But rest of all of the students, they have scored less than 90. So I'm not interested in any of these students. So now that I have identified the student detail for 7 and 8, we will go to the next table and we will see that for 7 and 8, what are the details available? So for student 7 and student 8, the name is name 6 and then name 7, and then their age is 24 and 22, state is CA and BO, which is exactly what we see as an output, right? So the output is definitely as per our expectation. Now let's take a look at the code on what's happening in the code. So first and foremost, I selected whatever variable I needed as an output. So I needed these 4 variables. That's why it's coming as a part of your select statement. Then I've written that I want all of these details from this particular table, which is ga1.student underscore details, where student ID in, and this is where my filter is coming in. Now I want to get the details for only those students where student ID is in. And now I have written another query. So for this query, we are saying that select the distinct student ID for only those student from the first table. So now I'm going to the first table, which is ga1 underscore student underscore marks, where marks is more than 90, right? So because I'm interested in getting details for only those students whose marks is more than 90. Now, if this is not making sense, let me just go ahead and trigger this code, which is the subcode first, and afterwards, hopefully this will make sense. So if I just trigger the internal part, which is select distinct student ID from this, then you will get 2 students, which is student 7 and 8. This is the output of your subquery because I have selected only this part of it. So essentially the first query is getting you the details for all of the students from this table where student ID is in, and then you have student ID 7 and 8, which is output of this particular query, which is select distinct student ID from this table where marks is more than 90. I hope now it makes sense. So it's a fairly simple concept. You can essentially go ahead and insert any of the subqueries as a part of your from statement, your where statement, your select statement, and so on. Okay, so now that we have seen one example where we are using where condition, and as a part of a where condition, we are using a subquery. Now let's take a look at another example where we are not going to use it as a part of a where condition, but rather we'll use it as a part of a from condition, right? So from this table, rather than saying from this particular table, I will go ahead and write a subquery over here. So let's take a look at one example like that. So first and foremost, let's just take a look at the problem statement. The problem statement is what is the average marks per student given each student equal weightage, right? So we want to know that what is the average mark that each student has gotten, but At the same time, I would like to give equal weightage to each student. So let's take a look at the data first to understand what is the question here. Now over here, we can see that each of the student has, some of the student have two records. Like for instance, this first student has two records, S1 and S2, and then has two different marks. However, this student, like say student ID 4, has only one record, right? And you don't have marks for this student for S2, which is just, we don't know what is this student got as a part of subject S2. Some of the other student, like similarly, student 7 has only one record, while student 8 has two records. Now, the problem statement says that I would like to know the average marks per student, but we want to give equal weightage to each student. So let me just go ahead and write all of this data as a part of an Excel sheet. Okay, so I have copied all of the data here in Excel sheet. So you have student ID, and these are all the different subjects, and these are different marks that these individual students have gotten. Now, one option is that I can just go ahead and take a simple average of all of these numbers, right? So which is what I have done here, which is approach 1. And in order to do so, all I have done is just taken an average of all of these numbers. Let me just press F2. As you can see that this is equal to average of all of these numbers. But this is not correct, because the problem is that given the fact that some student have one subject and some student have two subjects, this is not giving equal weightage to each student. For the student who have gotten two marks in two different subjects, they are getting more weightage, because I'm not first of all aggregating it at a subject level, but rather I'm just kind of giving equal weightage to each of the record. What I need to do is I need to give the equal weightage to each of the students. So how would I do that? In order to do that, first of all, I need to aggregate the data at a student level, right? And that's where I have created this another column called column F. And here you have intermediate average. So what I'm trying to do is, first of all, I'll take an average of these two marks, because these are the two different numbers that this student ID 1 has gotten. So which is what this particular variable is. So here you can see that this is the average of these two numbers, 10 and 11. Similarly, this for the second student, you have just one record. That's why the student have gotten just one particular number. The third student has, again, we are taking an average of 45 and 46, and that's why your average marks is 45.5. Now, if I take an average of all of this, then essentially we are giving an equal weightage to each student, because when we are taking the average of all of these numbers, this is like one record per student. So you have 10.5, which is for student ID 1, you have 36, which is for student ID 2, and so on, right? So whatever code that we are going to write, if we are going to get the output as 61.3125, then that is a right approach. If we do get the output as 59.61, then that is not the right approach, right? Okay, now let's go back to the SQL portal, and then let's try to write the code. So first of all, we will try to solve the problem with the wrong approach, which is approach 1, where we were not giving equal weightage to each student, but rather we will giving equal weightage to each student. So let's try to solve that. So that one is fairly simple. Select average of, I think it's marks from, we just see the name of the table, I think it's called GA1, student underscore marks from this. There we go. Let me just try to run this code. Let's see. There we go. So we get 59.615, right? Which is exactly like this. But this is not the right approach, right? Because we had already seen it, because that based on this approach, we are giving equal weightage to each of the students, to each of the subjects, but we want to give the equal weightage to each of the student. So now let's try to write the code for second approach, approach 2, and this one is approach 1, right? And this is approach 2. Okay, let's see what's the error. Not where it is position. Oh, sorry. There you go. Now let's take a look at the approach 2. Let me just go ahead and write the code first. So select, and let's say there is going to be some variable from, and we are going to write the name of the variable. So right now we don't know which variable this is. This is your average marks per student. So which is exactly this particular variable. So we haven't created that yet, but I'm going to write that right here. So the subquery is going to be select average of, well, first of all, I need to get the student underscore ID. So student underscore ID, comma, average of marks as, let's say we call it average marks, right? And then I'm going to select this information from this particular table. So let me go ahead and write that down. And let me just close this out as a. Now we know the name of this variable is average underscore marks. So let me just go ahead and write that down here. And this is a dot average underscore marks. So let me just write this. Let me just trigger the code. Let's see what do we get as an output. There is some error. Oh, I think I have forgotten the group by. So this is group by student underscore ID. Now let me just go ahead and trigger the code again. There we go. So now as an output, I can see that I have a dot average underscore marks, but there are a lot of different averages, right? So you have for first student, 10.5, 36, 45, and all these things. We don't want that. We actually want just one average, just the way we got it over here. So what went wrong? Because we have to go ahead and average it again. So we need to just write another average function. I'll explain that in a minute. Why are we doing this? Now, if we go ahead and trigger the code, you get 61.3125, which is exactly same as 61.3125. So this is the output that we are expecting, and this is the output that we are getting. So now let's take a look at what's happening. Over here in this Excel sheet, we saw that this entire process was divided in two different parts. So first and foremost, we took the average of the marks that is scored by each of the student at a student ID level, right? Which was this particular step. And so for instance, you can see that for the first student, the average is of between 10 and 11, and this is 10.5 and so on. And then as a step 2, we again took the average of this entire thing, right? Which is what's happening here. So this is your average of all of these marks, which is exactly what we are doing as a part of this code as well. So we are saying that step 1, I would like to go ahead and take an average for all of the students, and I would like to do the average at a student ID level. So that's why you are selecting student ID, comma, average of marks as average marks. So you're creating a new variable called average underscore marks. And then you're selecting it from the table called ga1.student underscore marks, and then you're grouping it by student ID. So this will go ahead and create that intermediate variable that we created in the Excel sheet. And then once we are done with that, then we are moving on to the outside query. This is your parent query. And over here, we are saying that let's just go ahead and take this average of all of the things that we have as an output for this particular table. Now, this subquery is giving me two variables. So it's giving me student ID and average of marks. But as an output, I'm just going to go ahead and use average underscore marks. And I'm going to go ahead and take the average of that, right? Which is exactly what we did in the Excel sheet. Now, if you're wondering what is this is nothing but I'm just creating an alias for this subquery. It's a good practice. We should definitely do that, because if you're not going to do it and if you have a lot more variables, then oftentimes your code will get confused that where is this average marks coming from. So if you use this as an alias, you're basically saying that I'm going to go ahead and create a temporary table as a part of this subquery, and I'm going to call this subtable as like a, and this is my alias. And whenever I want any kind of a variable or any kind of a data point out of this particular subquery, I'm going to go ahead and address that as a dot. And given the fact that you're creating this variable average underscore marks as a part of the subquery, when you want to use it, you want to just simply write a dot average underscore marks. So hopefully this is clear. Now, these are some of the very simplest way of using subquery. Today, we learned how to use a subquery as a part of your from statement, which is this second question. And then we also learned how to use subquery as a part of a where condition, which is the first problem statement. So hopefully this is clear to you. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop the questions in the comment section. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. So that's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching my content. If you like the content like this, please do like and subscribe. That's definitely going to help me a lot. Thank you so much. I wish you best of the luck in your learning journey.